Hey, welcome to the DG show with Dana and Coco. And Happy New Year. That's first and foremost. I guess we got to say that one, huh?
Yes.
Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everyone had a safe holiday. I hope everyone got what they wanted. Did you get what you wanted? You ain't want nothing.
I mean, I don't celebrate like that. So.
Me either. I know you don't. But usually for us, as far as a lot of folks that don't necessarily celebrate, it's still family time. It's still time to see relatives that you usually don't see all year long. You know what I mean? Get that energy.
I did get my grandkids their annual underclothes and things like that.
So you did. So you went a little shopping. But see, I do stuff like that too.
I did that way early on though.
Well, my mother started shopping for Christmas in the end of August.
Too much.
Listen. But we have to get into violence in the city. And Coco was talking about Wood City, and in my opinion, it's all the major cities where inner city black folks are. Now we're in Baltimore, and it's been very sad this first week of the year. I don't know if with Coco notes, I didn't necessarily want to get into the specifics of. No, it's a little girl passed away, gunfire. There was I'm going to call it a school shooting because it was right across the street from the school during lunch. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't even have been over there. It's a school shooting. Mm-hmm. And it's just been and then we add the normal violence. Then you know what I'm saying? We're talking about children, and with the school shooting, I believe one young man passed away and 5 more got shot, I believe, and they're recovering. But I want to get into the conversation, which means we always have to bring up why, we always have to put those things, but I also want to get into answers, concrete answers, things to think about, things we could build on individually as well as the community. I don't want to just talk about the violence and just be like, and just be on the youth without giving some solutions, at least some suggestions. Do you agree?
I agree with that. Yes.
We can get into it up here. Okay, so when I text you the topic of the week, at first you didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to do it.
Can you explain why?
I didn't want to do it because I don't have good feelings about the city where violence is concerned. My son was killed in 2020. Mm-hmm. And so the things surrounding that and the city's response and the outcome, I just don't have a lot of good things to say.
Right.
But it's not about having good things to say. I can't sit here. I don't want to speak from an emotional space.
Okay.
We need to look at the city as a whole, go back, identify why we are where we are with the violence. How does violence come about? The kids, because there's when your position a lot of times, and you haven't said your position, but and my experience with you, with your position, you place a lot of responsibility on the people.
Yes.
Right? And not that they don't hold any responsibility, but we cannot vilify the victims.
Oh, I agree with that.
We do not have the resources in the city that the people need in order to operate and function as a community. First of all, it's not a community.
It's not. I agree.
We need to provide the resources so that people can function as a community, and because communities operate from their resources.
Yes.
And there are resources in the community, and that those resources come back. It feeds into the community.
Can I give
people feed into the
Can I give a quick example of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Specifically in Baltimore. Now, as we see little neighborhoods pop up, some on Harbor East, Some are up off of, what is that, Key Highway on the other side of the harbor. In other places, you'll see a cleaners pop up. You'll see a couple of banks pop up. You'll see a good grocery store pop up. You'll see certain things where people don't have to go but so far to be able to have all of the resources they need to live just a very basic life. And then you'll start to see the hemp stores and the dispensaries and pharmaceutical. You'll start to see those things pop up also as people move in and build up a specific area for themselves. And what Coco was talking about is everybody don't have the power to build that up for themselves or even have the thought process.
Not even, I was going to say, not even the power, the thought process, the wherewithal, that we're in a perpetual cycle. Our people in this city are in a perpetual cycle, constantly from the very beginning at a deficit and constantly operating in that.
At a deficit.
So at a deficit. And so what it had me do was to do a lot more research. I had done research on Baltimore City a long time ago, but I had to go back to it because, of course, we need some updated information.
Right.
And basically, what we're seeing now is not new.
Oh, no, I agree.
It's a whole lot of the same thing.
I agree.
Year after year, time after time, right?
We just fuss about it.
Right. Now, I do, however, remember when we were young, we had some resources.
Yes.
Some resources.
Recs were open.
We had recs that were open. We had activities that were not very costly to our parents.
Right.
For us to do something with ourselves. We had, in school, we had some things that taught us some life skills that we can
I agree.
somewhat survive when we left school, whether it be a trade, whether it's
Even
college.
I remember having a class. I don't remember the name of the class, but within the class, this is in high school in Woodlawn, they taught us how to do interviews for jobs.
Yep.
That's a life
Miss Bullock.
skill.
Miss Bullock.
Yeah, the typing teacher.
Yeah.
That's a life skill.
It's a life skill.
And they don't do that nowadays. I mean, and we can get into the school and what classes they've taken out, like gym and art and those things that kind of stifle a child's mind in a certain kind of way.
There are certain skills that you'll get, why seemingly it doesn't mean anything at the time, but it builds confidence. It builds character in the children. We had to take typing. We didn't have a choice.
We had to take
We had to take typing. So if you had the skill of typing, there are a lot of things in your life that you were going to have to do to use that skill. If it's nothing more than working at McDonald's.
Right. I agree.
You know, you could work in any office. They had programs where we went to school half day, worked at Social Security.
And some in our age group, they're retiring from that job right now.
Right now.
And they but that was just like you said, as far as resources, it was systematic to always do Band-Aid work.
Right.
Give them some jobs here, but then we're gonna cut them back later. And whoever got in, got in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever even programs around the city, things are so tight in certain areas, but the need is so great that it may be overflowing, or it may be just not enough for the area.
Well, the resources was taken from Baltimore City.
Definitely.
The resources were taken because of the decline in population.
Okay.
The population, depending on the population, the state or the federal government allocates certain funds to determine, and I have it in my notes, to determine health care and where money's going to go and in what neighborhoods and things like that. What insurance is going to cost.
Right.
You know, those things like that.
Right.
All of the resources they need. And the population has declined over and over the years. From 1920 to 1950, it declined significantly. Right now, at about 600,000, just under 600,000 civilians in Baltimore City, this is the lowest in a century.
Really?
In 100 years, this is the lowest, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And largely, Baltimore City has been majority white.
I agree with that. I know that.
The blacks came in in the 70s, in the early 70s.
And they moved out.
and the whites left. So, mind you, the what is it? See, that's why I have to write these things down. The Fair Housing Act was only in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
So before the Fair Housing Act, black people couldn't even own.
Right, couldn't own and definitely couldn't live in certain areas.
Couldn't live in certain areas. And we talking about the riots that happened in Baltimore City. Baltimore City had 4 riots.
Talking about during them late 60s?
No. They had 4 riots. Wait a minute, I'm going to tell you when the riots were.
Look, go ahead and look it up.
Okay.
This is the DG Show with Dana and Coco. The topic tonight is violence in the city. We're in Baltimore, but I'm talking about violence all across the country in inner cities. We are live right now on YouTube, The Angry Black Dude, TikTok, The Angry Black Dude, the DG Show with Dana and Coco page on Facebook, as well as my personal page on Facebook, Derek E. Graham. Check us out Sunday 7 to 8. You got it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we're talking about in 1861 was the first riot in Baltimore City.
Okay, 1861.
1861.
Close to freedom.
Pratt Street riots.
Mm-hmm.
We were close. Well, the
was it a racial riot?
It was not. Wait a minute. Yeah, sorta. But mind you, the Emancipation Proclamation freed enslaved blacks on January 1st, 1863. Slavery did not end in Maryland until the adoption of a new state constitution November 1st of 1864.
Right. That's what I was at. I was like, we
Right.
close. We were close.
We were
so
close.
was it some?
So the Baltimore riot, the Pratt Street riots, was a civil conflict on April 19th, 1861 on Pratt Street.
Mm-hmm.
It occurred between anti-war Copperhead Democrats, the largest party in Maryland, and other Southern Confederate sympathizers on one side, and on the other, members of Massachusetts and Pennsylvania state militia regimes en route to the national capital at Washington who had been called up for federal service. The fighting began at President Street Station, spreading throughout President Street and subsequently to Howard Street, where it ended at Camden Street Station. The riot produced the first deaths by hostile action in the American Civil War.
Oh,
and is often called the first bloodshed of the Civil War.
Pratt Street, huh?
Pratt Street. Now, we know they built that back up.
Oh, the harbor's lovely.
Yes, absolutely. So then
President Street, all of that's Harbor East.
Right.
That's $1 million condo.
That's
oh
it.
Yeah, definitely.
So now let's go to the riot of 1919.
Okay.
The Baltimore riots of 1919 were a series of riots connected to Red Summer of 1919 as more and more African Americans moved from the South to the industrial North. They started to move into predominantly white neighborhoods. This change in the racial demographics of urban areas increased racial tension that occasionally boiled over into civil unrest. And it happened in July, and the Haynes Report, as summarized in the New York Times, lists a race riot as taking place on July 11th. Baltimore, 1919. Mind you, we weren't even heavy here at that time.
Yeah, but right. But we were coming for that industrial revolution.
Right. And then they had another one that same year in October. At the end of Red Summer riots of 1919, a small group of soldiers from Fort Meade were walking near Eastern Avenue and Spring Street when a bottle was thrown from a house and hit one of them. The doughboys began yelling at the Negroes and daring them to leave their homes. There was fear that another riot would develop. Baltimore police were called and they forced the soldiers to leave the area. An hour later, the soldiers returned with 50 or 60 more and began shooting at any black person they encountered.
That's how they did.
When the police arrived, they shot at the soldiers. A riot call produced 2 patrol loads of police. 4 soldiers were arrested and the others withdrew. They returned half an hour later in greater numbers and charged along Eastern Avenue. They were met by the police with heavy clubs. 2 more soldiers were arrested and order was restored. Mind you, they rebuilt that too.
Yeah, you said Eastern Avenue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So now, 1968. Black folk here now.
Mm-hmm.
Another riot, the civil unrest that lasted from April 6th
It's MLK, right?
to April 14th, all up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. 1968 in Baltimore. The uprising included crowds filling the streets, burning and looting local businesses, and confronting the police and National Guard. The immediate cause of the riot was the April 4th assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee. which triggered unrest in over 100 cities across the United States. These events are sometimes described as the Holy Week Uprising. Spiro Agnew, the governor of Maryland, called out the thousands of National Guard troops and 500 Maryland State Police to quell the disturbance. When it was determined that the state forces could not control the rebellion, Agnew requested federal troops from President Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, they never rebuilt.
And let's say what Pennsylvania Avenue was back then.
They never rebuilt.
All of the entertainers were performing on Pennsylvania Avenue in Baltimore.
Yeah.
All, when I say all, I'm talking about Red Fox, Billie Holiday, just all of the entertainers. That's what Pennsylvania is. It's called in Baltimore. When you come here, it's the Avenue. That's what it is.
Right.
I want to say they had the Royal Theater there. That's
Yes.
one of them.
Yes.
The Sphinx Club.
Yeah.
That's another
A
one.
lot of black stores.
Black.
shopping,
It was
everything,
all
businesses all up and down.
right. It was
Never
a
rebuilt.
never rebuilt. To this day,
To this day.
it's actually Pennsylvania and North. Then you go down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Upton Station and the Upton Market. Those are actually the last two open air drug markets that are just allowed to be.
Just allowed.
Just once you walk north and Penn,
Yeah.
you walk. It's just anything goes.
Anything goes.
Anything
Police
goes.
right there.
Oh yeah, and they're not gonna stop it
Right.
unless maybe some violence breaks out or something like that. But
Exactly.
it's anything goes there. And how you're putting this together is interesting because it is. And wait a minute, I'm gonna add something onto that. If you remember, Freddie Gray.
Well, this is the last riot
Go
that
ahead.
we have here, 2015,
Mm-hmm.
after Freddie Gray. Now, Freddie Gray arrest happened on April 12th of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And then the protests began on the 18th after his death.
Right.
And the violence escalated after April 25th. Now, they talk about how this violence was somehow connected to the 1968 riot, and as a result, they further destroyed what was already destroyed
Already beat up,
and was never
rebuilt.
recovered.
Now, I was going to talk about that. All right, now, real quick. Now, the now mayor, back then, he was a councilman. I remember
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Brandon Scott was
Yes.
councilman back then, right? Now he's mayor. Now, back then, specifically what you're talking about, he got on TV, he dropped tears, and he actually said, we haven't been rebuilt since the 60s. And but he was upset that the city was burning, but he wasn't upset before the city burned because they never rebuilt.
Nobody was. They were not going to rebuild these black neighborhoods.
Ever. Until
They were upset that black people were thriving.
Yes. Yes.
They were thriving in these neighborhoods.
Yes.
And they did not want to see it.
Yes.
And they did not allow to be rebuilt.
And I can say that's all over the country. Even when you get to even Haiti being the only successful as far as decolonizing their land, I'm gonna say it that
They
way.
blackballed them.
They're still not able to do business the way the government supposedly
Because
went
they
in.
don't want to be a part of their system.
They don't want to be a part of their system. And it seems as though as we get more and more into history and understanding certain things, it seems as though we're discovering that when we hear about Lake Lanier and they just made a lake where black folks used to live because it was thriving and it was doing well, and they made them evacuate, and now white folks, that's their vacation lake, and they finding rings and stuff at the bottom of the lake like it's some kind of treasure. No, that's coming from bodies and homes and stuff. So it's the same way with Pennsylvania Avenue because of the way you broke it down. I'm going to say it that way. I have a better understanding that it's the same way. They will not rebuild. You know when they're going to rebuild Pennsylvania Avenue? When they finish gentrifying up and down Franklin and they start slowly coming in. And then
what they're doing, they have a plan that you can easily see. You can go on the websites and see their plan. They have it laid out there. It's there for everybody to see. But nobody's looking at that. Nobody's looking at the leadership. They're not talking to their councilmen in their areas about what they demand. Demand what it is that you need. Demand what you want. The school. Oh, not to mention that the poor schooling that we have.
Yeah,
school resources.
Yeah.
We still have kids that literally have to walk more than a mile to school.
Sometimes. Yeah, within the city sometimes.
Yeah, in the city.
Yeah.
More than a mile to school. Why is that?
It's the way it's broken down, or the way broken up, because you can pick your schools within the city.
You can't pick your schools. School choice is a problem. School choice is a problem. You cannot pick. You go to your school based on where you live.
I think that's just for elementary school, though.
Mm-mm. They have Title I. Mm-hmm. That No School Left Behind. I think that was under Bush.
Yeah, that was under Bush.
Right.
That was the worst thing in the world.
Right, and you still have some Title I schools.
Because now they're graduating them because they can't be left behind.
Right.
They're graduating not on reading level, not on math level,
but
zero
not
skills.
Even only that. Not even only that. So with No Child Left Behind, you had an opportunity to choose a school for your child to go to, as long as if the school in his area was a Title I school. But the problem with that is when that child leaves that school, that money goes with them.
With the child, right.
So now that school has less resources. So build up the resources in that community and in that school so it can keep the children there.
And I can honestly say, I understand. Remember it was some administrators were getting caught changing test scores?
Yeah.
That was about funding.
Yeah, it was about funding.
It was about holding on to the dough.
If they have the kids passing the test, they get the money.
It was about funding.
It's really that simple. And they want the funding.
They need
the funding for their kids.
They need it.
These people don't have resources, and they're in the cycle. They're in the cycle of social service. Let's go back to the 60s. We back at the 60s,
mm-hmm.
where it was a rule that the man couldn't be in the home.
Right.
If you were on social service and things like that. Now, I was speaking to my friend, and he was like, I think it's still like that. It sort of is.
It is,
I don't think it's the rule. It's just a perpetual cycle that's been the practice.
But I'm going to say this, though. A lot of that, I ain't talking about the rules, I'm talking about how it was carried. A lot of that changed in them late 80s to 90s, meaning it's always a man living in the house. And they're not coming to check like they did when they first initiated.
They don't have the resources.
They don't have the resources to come check. And the average sister ain't just letting you in the house because you popped up to say who live in there.
Right.
You must be out your mind.
You're not coming in here.
So it's different. And I'm going to say this, honestly, that, in my opinion, the welfare system should be a hustle for us. For anybody on it. Meaning, if you need it, use it. Get everything you need and everything that you're eligible for, but have a plan that by the time it runs out or in so many years, you don't need it. Take the crutch. Don't make it a permanent crutch, but take the crutch as needed. It
used to be a plan, but then people stop. The resources stop to help these people develop a plan. And then you had some programs that came back in, the Welfare to Work program and things like that. But you're looking at, by this time, so we have the Welfare to Work program, so you need to take advantage of it. But I'm already on crack, because in come the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
I'm already on crack. And so now you're blaming me because the crack epidemic started, and now I'm on crack, and you gave me this Welfare to Work program, and I'm supposed to try my best to stop my addiction so that I can now go to work.
Right.
But again, the resources aren't there. And I'm not making our reasons our excuses, but we have to provide these things in the community. There was a time in the community where, what we would call now, and I'm not judging people, but what we would call where there were real grandmothers.
Right.
You had Big Mama. Mm-hmm. And you might not have been Big Mama's child.
But she took
you
care
may
of
have had no relation to this woman.
Mm-hmm.
But she took care of you because you was a kid in her community.
But you know what?
I had one of those.
That happens a lot in the impoverished areas,
mm-hmm.
where
It used to happen a lot.
No, it still
It happens,
it still
but it's not as.
it's not the same.
it's not
I
as
agree.
like it used to be.
Community's not the same. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not the same. But it happens, and it's usually just out of somebody doing it from the heart and have an understanding that baby ain't gonna eat.
Right.
That baby ain't gonna have no
Right.
shoes. Go get them old shoes out your closet. See if
Right.
they can fit them.
So if mama was on crack, there was a big mama
Right.
next door, down
to
the
fall
street,
back to fall back on.
up the street to fall back on.
Yeah.
She would take the kid, make sure the kid ate, make sure the kid got to school, that sort of thing.
Right.
It just was. But we don't really have that anymore. That's what community is
But
about.
okay, so we transitioning
Mm-hmm.
from the history and the lack of resources
Mm-hmm.
to what we could do ourselves.
We could.
Because when now you start talking about Big Mama
Mm-hmm.
and community, these are the things that we can do ourselves to curb the violence, to curb the poverty, to curb some of the negativity. If you're starting to talk about Big Mama and family and her being a safety net in many times.
These are things that worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but we're in 2023.
Right.
These are things that worked. Those things aren't the things that exist now. We need to use the tools that we currently have to be able to do what it is that we need to do. You would love to bring Big Mama back, but
Yeah, she
I'm
ain't coming
52. I have 2 grandkids. I am not Big
Yeah,
Mama.
yeah. It ain't grandmas ain't the same no more.
I ain't finna be Big Mama.
No,
I'm
amen.
not.
And men your age don't want you to be.
I'm not
Because we
taking
don't. It's
nobody's
different.
job.
It's
now,
different.
I will help somebody out,
Yeah.
but I personally don't have the
Now
resources
can we? I actually.
to
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
to give to all all the people that I know kids.
Right. So now, in us being able to do for ourselves, of course, I get into what I wrote down as well as what I was thinking. I get into what we could do individually and what we've done individually. And what came to my mind, if you don't mind getting into it a little bit, of the people that have lived in your house in the last 10 years and how you've made a choice to help. How you've made a choice to say, I got you for this amount of time, get it together, handle your business, love you,
Not
see you
even
later.
in the last 10 years, but since I've been an adult,
Okay.
I've had friends live with me.
Uh-huh.
I've had in my life, even since when I was an adult, I've had cousins live with me.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents pulling their resources together. We're all in the same house. They making it work. Things like that.
Right.
That's the type of stuff that creates a community. My best friend and I was just having a conversation, and we were reminiscing on the past a little bit. And at the time, this is in our 20s, we were both single mothers. And we were talking about, had we known then what we knew now,
Right.
we would have just lived together and raised our kids together.
Yeah. It would have been a big weight off of everybody.
Yeah, we could have just done that. And it was no reason why we couldn't have.
So
We didn't
so
think
that's
about
somebody that you get along
Yeah.
with, because that matters. Doing that,
It
no,
matter.
it matters in the space of you have to be mature enough to say, I ain't gonna get along with this person all the time, but I have my space, I got my
But
freedom.
there's just proper decorum that people just don't exercise.
Right.
It really is.
I
It's just
agree.
proper decorum that people just don't
They
exercise.
make a choice not
now
to.
that I'd love to go back to, because it don't exist. We like to say it's common sense. Sense ain't common.
Sense ain't common.
It just doesn't happen for whatever reason.
I agree.
Now, I looked into the crime.
Mhm.
Now, the one thing that I saw was, and I think I can remember this one, 80% of the crime is largely in poor neighborhoods
Always.
and only 25% of the communities.
Mm-hmm. That's how it goes, though.
Small. Now, we looking at it, we talking about, 300 homicides. But it just happened in these little small
Very little
pockets.
and
the same pockets over and over.
and not just that, it's the same pockets,
Mm-hmm.
but then within the pockets, it's still the majority of people in those pockets are good people.
Yeah.
They just like they're in impoverished areas where they grew. They're probably comfortable there.
Right.
They understand the environment. They
Right.
understand the politics of the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they don't have the economics to leave.
And it's 80% of gun homicides occur in 25% of the neighborhoods. In 1977, there was 171 homicides, and it went up and down in between there. In 1987, there was 226.
Correct.
In 1996, there was 333. In 1997, there was 313. I was going every 10 years, but then I realized that in the 9th year, it was more than it would have been in that 10th year. In 2007 was 282, down again.
Mm-hmm.
In 2017, it was 348. In 2021, it was 337. Now, the one thing that I noticed, though, that in 2011, now we were on an upswing, seriously. In 2011, there was only like 100 and something homicides.
Really?
Surprisingly, yes.
Okay.
It was the lowest in the 2000s.
Right.
And I was trying to find something that happened
That indicated.
in Baltimore to indicate why it was such a low
all right. So let's think about this real
homicide,
quick.
and I couldn't find anything.
Okay. So as the numbers started going up,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta bring in the drug trade. You have to bring in for-profit prisons.
Yeah.
You have to bring in mass incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you talking about who was president in 2011?
Obama.
What did he affect real heavy? For-profit prisons. He was on them.
Yeah.
He was on them.
Yeah.
So in that, would that slow everything down? Not to say that would be the only reason,
Mm-hmm.
but it may have slowed down some of the I'll say background mechanics.
Well, in my research, they indicated that it was under Stephanie Rawlings Blake administration,
Okay.
and that she had done something significant, a campaign or something that she had Occupy Baltimore. Was that it?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
And somehow that may have contributed to the decline of that year.
Right.
Now they're saying after Freddie Gray, it's been soaring.
Well, let's be honest.
It's been soaring.
When Freddie Gray happened, it was talked about by many folks in Baltimore that the police just stepped back
Right.
because they got charged.
Right.
All of them said, "Well, we'll come after everything done,"
Right. Now,
and that's what happened.
in 2016, Coldstream Homestead Montebello neighborhood was the city's most lethal neighborhood.
Coldstream, Montebello,
Mm-hmm.
Bel Air Road.
Yeah. That was the city's most lethal neighborhood. One out of every 2 shootings were fatal. And they say that gang-related crimes are typically connected to drug territories and drug dealing.
Right.
Well, everybody that's a drug dealer is not a gang member, but okay.
And everybody that's a drug dealer ain't violent.
Right.
So it is a very from what I really understand, it's like 1% of the people that are committing most of the violence. 1 to 5% of the people that are committing most of the violence.
Why don't they stay in prison? Why aren't they?
Because the laws let them go.
Well, you have all these, this whole prison pipeline and all these people that are locked up that shouldn't be, but the people who should
be locked. Yeah. So again, the system is working right on both levels. The movie Life was real. Just get them in the system and keep them in the system. That's what the movie Life was about. Eddie Murphy just did it in a entertaining way.
And so, but they keep them in the system, but they keep letting them out.
No, they keep
for them to
letting
commit more crimes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To keep the community in check. All of it is working the way it's supposed to. Who are they when they get out and recommit?
Right.
And terrorize. Who are they terrorizing? The same folks.
The same folk.
And
they let them back out again.
Yeah.
Again and again. Over and over.
I agree.
They just let them out. So you have Sandtown Winchester is one of West Baltimore's most blighted and problematic neighborhoods.
Yeah, it is.
That's where Freddie Gray was from. During the second half of the 20th century, Sandtown experienced economic depression, housing abandonment, etc.
Most of the houses, I can say it's very run down.
Yeah, and they say all this allegedly as a result of the Baltimore riots of 1968. And then they experienced riots again in 2015. So Sandtown.
We was getting ready to fix it from 1968, but y'all,
ready to fix it.
2 more years we had
Right
y'all.
before we was fixing it, we was on it. I'm telling you.
Then Freddie Gray happened and y'all flipped out.
Right.
So now y'all gotta wait another 30-something
30
years.
Now my father's from that community, and he lived in that community in 1968 during the riots. You know,
Wow.
my mother tell her he was in the riots, but that's something else. I have nothing to do with that. Statute of limitations is up. That man did his duty.
He did what he's supposed to do.
The Baltimore Police Department consists of 4,000 civilian and sworn-in personnel to include dispatchers, crime lab techs, chaplains, and unarmed auxiliary police officers. I don't know who they are.
I ain't never. Maybe the ticket meter maids or something.
Perhaps. And they said during Martin O'Malley's administration, the department increased to 46% black. That was a shock to me.
That's wonderful. No, but then who?
Good.
But then who did
And
they
then
bring in and
nothing.
switched it?
Folks.
The commissioner that got locked up. What is his
I
name?
don't know his name. I can't recall.
He
his
looked
name.
like Doug Heffernan. That's who he looked
does.
like.
I wish I would have looked that up, but I didn't think about the commissioner. I was on the mayor and everything else about the city. I did not think about the commissioner. Why was he locked up?
Because he was stealing money from the city, and he was
Always go back to the money.
he was tricking off with the city swipe with some chick. He was buying the stuff and all that. I can't
We
think of
have
his
low
name
resources,
for nothing.
and then we get $2 over lunch money, and you want to blow it.
Right. So, but when he came in my opinion, this was a declaration. Mm-hmm. He got either a mural made, a statue, a painting, something of police officers. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was all white.
Oh.
And that was a shift.
And then things like, what's that show that We Run the City? Is that the name of it? The show that was just on, well, it's still up there. We Run the City. You didn't watch that show?
No.
Oh, you should have watched that show.
It
was about that group of police officers, the task force.
Okay. Oh, the ones that got locked up?
Yes, they got locked up.
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you gotta go home and watch it. You're gonna binge it. Once you watch the first one,
Really?
you're gonna binge it. Yes, it's the best thing.
But all of that is mixed in with our topic, which is violence in the city.
Yeah.
If the people don't have the resources, if the people don't have the know-how to even take care of themselves properly, and they're not going to be taught, you got to figure it out yourself a lot of times, especially when you're in generational poverty. You have to figure things out a lot by yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm still putting it on the family. I'm still putting it on for the. I'm not going to say. I'm going to say most of the weight. I'm going to say.
We're coming to an age of information.
Mm-hmm.
We are coming to a point where it's too much information, and it's at your fingertips and readily available for you not to try and figure something out. But people have to know that they're in a situation. And some people don't.
No, because a lot of people happy in the situation they in.
They happy in it because they.
I agree with you. Now, real quick, I did write down something. Last week, early morning, going to work, police officer was talking to somebody. I was grabbing like iced coffee or something, and he was talking about carjackings in the city, and he said they're way up. Mm-hmm. So in chatting with him those few minutes, I have an understanding, and I need women to understand. Stop getting gas when it's dark.
Stop getting gas when it's light. I done saw some shady stuff.
Stop. Pick and
Don't get no gas.
No, pick and choose where you go.
You have to do.
Pick and choose where you go to get gas.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, even if you live in one of those shady areas, if you drive, you don't stay in those shady areas all the time. So when you're outside of those areas, pick and choose where you go. Mm-hmm. When you be very mindful of your surroundings. Coco, I kind of felt bad when I did this. This was another early morning. And this was the gas station up Northwood, where they about 3 murders that happened in the last.
At a gas station?
Right there, yeah.
Wow.
About 3 murders that happened there in the last, say, 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
Right. So it's dark. I run in, come back out. it's a woman like my mother's age getting gas. I went into a different. I looked at her and said, "You know, you're not supposed to be out here." Like I had that face,
Yeah.
and she was like, "I know." I went, started getting my gas. I go right back over to her, and I was like, "Get in the car." Like I knew her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I swear to goodness, while I'm pumping her gas, these shady young folks definitely look like they on a mission. Definitely look like they get high.
Yeah.
They pull up in a van, and I'm like, "Oh, they done got her."
Well, my sister went to a gas station. I forget the gas station she told me, and she saw some real shady activity. And there was a girl assisting a guy and trying to get a girl.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a lot of shady women that
Like
they down with that.
They're helping them, and they have other women
Yeah.
helping them in. So you have to watch out for that. But that brings me to another point of a city full of people that are stressed.
Yeah.
You're constantly in fight or flight mode.
Definitely.
That's no way to operate. That contributes highly to illnesses, to depression, to mental illness, so many things.
And anger management.
Anger
Because you will
management,
snap if you're
so many things.
Yeah.
Because you always, as my sister say, keep your head on swivel. You always on swivel.
that means you never relax.
You never relax.
Yeah.
You can't just, a time when I could just walk. Now, I was just in Mexico. Now, people told me I could get kidnapped in Mexico. But I was relaxed. Wasn't nobody messing with me. We
Right.
just walking around like we just free and
Right.
relaxed. You just didn't have to be
Right.
on. A lion wasn't chasing me all day.
Right. Right. And I'm with you on that, and I understand that being raised in certain areas, you are raised with a certain amount. Now you have all the street knowledge, without a doubt, but you're also raised with a certain amount of stress, and you don't even know it because it's regular.
Yeah. And now we in the OK Corral because everybody can have a
Everybody
gun.
got a gun.
Just assume everybody has a gun.
Yeah.
Just assume.
I want to add another piece to that, to the violence, in that I was talking to a friend of mine, and he told me something, and it's definitely true. So we know the opioid epidemic is going on. It's real heavy, and whether people want to choose to understand it or not, it's just heroin in a pill form. All these young folks, they own heroin. They're heroin addicts. That's what they
And
are.
it's legal.
And to a large extent, it is legal. So think about this as far as the robberies and the senseless killings. You know, heroin addicts go through withdrawals when they can't get it. And they have to get it. It's not a withdrawal like coke or crack where you just going, but no, your body's gonna start aching, and you're gonna start going
And they're
through
gonna do
horrible.
whatever they need
They're
to
gonna
do
do
to get it.
whatever they need. That's a lot of this. They're just getting enough. That's why it's no rules anymore, because they're attacking civilians because they're addicts, and they're not coming at no hustlers. They don't want that beef. They want a quick.
Right.
Let me grab this car. I know I'm gonna find a phone in it, pocketbook in it, whatever. Give me, you know what I'm saying? And then add to the point of them being addicts and senseless killings, and being in a different mind state of when they're doing things. Please believe I don't do excuses. I'm just giving reasons of why some of these things are happening. And the drug addiction of the youngins is a huge factor. And
You know, when I was in college, I went to college for social work. And one of my specialties was drug addiction. And I became a certified drug addictions counselor. Specifically for youth. Now, I ended up going in a different direction because there was not a need at that time.
right,
There wasn't a need at that time.
right,
And I was too young, because I tried, to assist those older people who were. And they were like, girl, you can't tell me nothing. Have you ever done drugs? Is your mother on drugs? Don't tell me nothing.
Don't tell me nothing.
Okay. So I took the route of the young people. But it wasn't a great need at the time. Now, all of these years later,
That's the biggest
They
need.
need people like myself.
Yeah.
I'm not getting back in the game. I'm sorry, but I'm just
It's,
saying.
and it's a different game.
It's interesting to have watched it go this direction, this way, with so many young people. And we could blame it on the music. We could blame it on a number of
It's
things.
a little bit of everything.
It's a little bit of everything. But so many young people are addicted. Not even opioids. They're just trying, like, the drugs are just
It's too readily available.
very much so.
And it's too.
It's not shamed on
It's
anymore.
not. It's nothing is shameful.
It's not shameful anymore. Where when we were younger, not that our friends didn't try drugs, because they did, but you surely didn't want mama to find out. You didn't want auntie to find out. You didn't want nobody to find out.
Yeah.
You were hiding it.
Yeah.
These kids don't even hide it.
They don't.
I smoke. I drink.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah. I agree. And it definitely it's definitely.
The Mollies.
And this is the kicker though. When we were talking about depression and being raised on depression, they coping.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of not to say that they're not following and they're not taking up on the trends, which a lot of teens do and young adults do.
Right.
But they're also masking their feelings and hiding their
drugs and
feelings
alcohol.
with the drugs and the alcohol, and they've been groomed that way because that's what they saw. Now they might not pick.
Sometimes.
They might. A lot of times, even I you know how a lot of times in families the children will follow closely to what the parents did. They might not do the exact same thing, but it's kind of a lot of that happens.
Well, and see, I hear you talk about that a lot, but I know too many people who just didn't come from that kind of family, and yet they still somehow.
My brother was one. I'm with you.
Right. They
I'm
still
not-
somehow. There's no formula. Is all I'm saying.
It's not 100%.
It could be what they saw, but
I think I'll say this though. It's more folks that were raised around addiction that become addicts than folks not raised around it and become addicts. Can you understand what I'm saying? When you're raised in it,
I know some people who was raised around addicts, and they adamant about because they had to raise themselves.
Yeah,
and
they
pull
were- yeah, they're not
themselves up
touching
by their
nothing.
own
I'm
bootstraps,
with you.
that they not touching nothing. I mean, it's a balance of it, is all I'm saying. So we can't say, okay, if you don't do crack, if you get a job and you have your husband and wife in the house, and you got 2.2
That your children
children,
gon- right.
and you have a dog and a cat, and everything is peachy, then your son won't do crack.
right?
No, that's not how it
That's
works.
a personal choice.
That's not how it works.
I agree. That's a personal choice.
Yeah.
It is. Even and the kicker is this: the personal choice is getting younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, it's 13-year-olds strapped in a lot of cities.
Yes.
Like, and about that work. Like, have the mentality.
Yeah.
They're about that work.
Yeah. And they smoke.
And they smoke. And they drink.
They on TikTok.
And they popping pills. Yeah, and they popping pills.
Yeah.
And all of that. And again, it is a personal choice. But at that age, the question is, when did you let them go? When did they start? Because that don't happen overnight for a 13-year-old to be strapped, for a 13-year-old to be smoking.
You could easily say that you could see it going in that direction, and some people put that on the kids.
No, that's on the adults raising the child. Whether that the ones in the house, the family members, definitely the school. When they start seeing, at least the school should be able to be in touch with the family to let them know what they
I'm
see.
interested to see what this new generation is going to come out to be with so many autistic children.
There's a lot of autistic children.
There are
isn't
a lot of autistic
there?
children.
I agree.
And how these children are going to, I mean, mind you, there are a lot of autistic children that I know now that are adults, that are functioning adults.
Mm-hmm.
And they started out that way.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like, from my observation, that there are plenty of resources for these newly diagnosed group
That's a
of
lot.
autistic children.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot. I really, really can't wait to kind of see what is the contributing factor to this, because it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that all of these kids. Now, looking back on some kids I knew. I'm trying to just think if it was one or two in my family. I can't think of anybody. But we know some kids that, I mean, they was off the chain, and they did not know what to do with him.
Yeah.
He could have been autistic.
Oh no, we had, but it was few. See,
But they was just whipping them kids,
yeah,
and they were putting them in the room and punishing them and doing all
Yeah,
sorts
you're
of
right.
things.
that's the ones that had
that's something.
ADHD and we didn't know
Yeah,
what to call it.
right.
It was just sit your ass still.
Yeah, we didn't know what to call it, and
I'm with
you know. And,
But it was a few. It
Right.
wasn't what it is.
right.
And I don't even, the ADHD thing, a lot of that is just being children. A lot of it is just being children.
Because in our kids' generation, it was the ADHD, but now in my grandchildren's generation, it's the autism. So ADHD popped up,
Mm-hmm.
and then autism popped
So
up.
is it a medication thing? I don't. Listen, we can get into that because I know the autism. They've already been sued.
I'm not a scientist. It could be a number.
They've been sued over vaccines and autism in children. So it's when they get more than one. I've told my daughters I don't care how much the children are behind. They get one at
They
a
get
time.
one at a time.
They don't get 2,
We
3,
gonna
4
catch
shots.
up later.
Right.
We're not getting, because you get backed up on these kids' shots. You show up at the doctor.
They'll
need
give
to
you
catch
3,
your
4 at a
shots up.
time.
Bow, bow,
Yeah,
bow, bow.
you don't do that to your
Mm-mm.
child.
Don't do that. Because one shot will send the child's system in the shock.
Right.
He go home, he got a fever, he's agitated and those things. So can you imagine hitting them with 4 shots at once?
At one time. And you wonder why they've been crying all night.
Right.
Ain't going through.
And you don't know how to cope. So now you've created trauma
Right.
in them. And that
Right.
trauma is expelled in other ways. So that's all.
We just talked about, that was in my notes, about the youth ADHD meds since 6, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Opioid epidemic, raising themselves. A lot of them are raising
And then a lot
themselves.
of the trauma is contributed to the crime too, the crime that occurs. So you have the trauma, and I'm going to use myself as a example.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore City has resources that they provide you when you had a loved one that died as a result of homicide.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go to these groups, you go to counseling and things of that nature. And the one thing that I realized, because of course this is my first experience with this, I realized quickly that some of these people, this was their life.
Explain that.
There was a lady, she was there because her son was killed,
Mm-hmm.
but it was her second son that was killed.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
Her baby's father had been killed. Her daughter was killed. And I'm on here like,
She broken.
you not committed yet?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm barely hanging on here. And you got a litany of people.
Mm-hmm.
She
Close to you.
She in that group every week. People that were close to her. Ma'am.
She probably ain't had no choice but to be there every week.
And she was an elder. And she's trying to console other people. She wasn't the only one.
I've known people that 3, 4 people in their family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so similar situation for my daughter. My daughter came to me, she said, Mom, I don't want to go to that group. I said, why? She was like, I'm not like them kids. And I said, what you mean? She was like, their brother, their uncle,
Mm-hmm.
their father, everybody did. Everybody was killed in Baltimore City.
That's different.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
And so now I had to take her out because now I'm exposing her to more trauma than she just experienced.
Right.
As a result of her experiencing that trauma.
Right.
Craziness.
Right. She thought she was hurt, but she like, nah, they got some other.
She's like, I'm good.
Let somebody else get this
Let
chair.
them do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and do something else.
But that's real, and understanding people and understanding environment and how important environment is, and understanding how environment molds us. Because you have to understand, everybody's not mourning in the same way when they lose 3, 4, 5 people close to them. Some of them are mourning in the way of violence.
Yeah.
Some of them, they're going to go off at the drop of a hat because they feel as though, oh, I can go too. So
yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah. The trauma's real.
It's very real.
Yeah.
And I'll say to anybody going through it, find somebody to talk to, whether it's a group, whether it's an official group, it's a clique of homeboys that y'all just go light up cigars or go fishing. Talk about how you feel.
Yeah.
Let them tears flow.
Yeah.
A lot of men don't want that, and I was that way sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You don't want them tears to flow, but a good cry sometimes will just calm you down.
It releases the trauma that you have pent up in you.
Because it's going to come out.
Yeah, because it's going to come out one day, and it might come out in a way
in a very negative way.
You don't want it to.
And I've, sad to say, I've witnessed bros in the bookings.
Yeah.
And you hear them, you're like, what's going on? Man, I don't know. They took my clothes and they got me in this white suit. Oh, you done flipped out?
You have
and
a
you don't know you
meltdown
flipped
in
out.
A way, you have a meltdown in
you
a
got
way
evidence all
you
over.
don't even know yourself.
Right. You done flipped out. You woke up like, oh, what'd I do?
Right.
I snapped, like, especially when we get to, we talking about the opioids, we talking about the alcohol, mixed in with the trauma.
That's it.
All of that matters.
Yeah.
All of that is part of just one person being violent.
Yeah.
It could be just different things. We don't know, and I'm going to say this. I just had a talk with my son because of the violence. And we don't know what people are going through. Meaning, when we see the videos and we be laughing at them and giggling at them on people in Walmart arguing and people out in the street and blocking people in and all that, you don't know what somebody's been through. Leave people alone. If you don't have nothing good to say to them, and it's not something serious.
Your business.
You gotta
mind your business and drink your water. That's
you definitely should mind your business.
Mind your business and drink your water. You don't go judging those people. You don't know what had to go through today. You don't know where he woke up today.
Leave people alone. You're gonna wind up in the grasp of somebody, and you be like, man, I just my bad, no.
What he going through probably don't even have anything to do with right now.
Right, but you
were the straw that broke the camel's back.
You the one.
That's it. You the one today. You got picked.
It's definitely a tricky slope when we talk about violence in the community. It definitely goes beyond. I'm not gonna say beyond. There's a whole bunch of things going on before the violence. From the government to guns getting into the city to the school system to the drug trade it's a lot of different things going on to get to that one person doing that act, or even a community feeling as though they have to have a gun on them all the time. Certain folks.
But I'm sorry not to cut your wisdom, but you talked about in the beginning, it's almost time for us to end, and you talked about in the beginning to provide some solutions. That's a whole nother show, to provide some solutions. But a start with providing solutions, it is something all of us know. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Love on folk.
And sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
I ain't going to act like it's not.
Easy to do.
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. Pay it forward.
I agree. And I'm going to say something small that's really big for a lot of us. Start off by saying hi to your neighbors. When y'all pass, when y'all getting in the car, good morning, good evening. Those little things will help the community, and it'll help them.
Start where you are.
Yeah, it just helps. Little things just help. And I'm going to say this to the fathers. Get in touch with your children if you're not. You matter. Be around them as much as possible, because just statistically, gentlemen, you matter. Your children, if you're in their life, they're looking to you to get approval. I promise you they are. But you have to be there. You can't just pop up with the title daddy, because it ain't going to mean nothing to them at all.
And don't just pop up because they got in trouble in school today.
Yeah, don't be that. Don't be the disciplined parent, because they ain't going to like it. Right. Just be there. Pop up just to walk them from their last period class to the bus stop, just to chill with them for 15, 20 minutes and clown, get in your car and leave.
Go have lunch with
them. Have lunch with them. All those little things. That matters. So you're not going
across the street to Popeyes to lunch and getting shot.
And so you can have that conversation with them. Yeah, you know that I know you want to go over there. Ain't nothing going on over there.
Leave
They'll
the
respect
school.
you. They respect what you say when you put the time in. I ain't gonna say they're gonna always listen, but they respect what you say when you put the time in and show the love. That's a huge piece to this inner city violence. Men, I ain't talking about who you have a child with. I'm talking about your children. Be around. Be in good morning text. You got 5 of them in different homes. It should be a good morning text to all of them. Have a good day. Love you. Talk to me later. All of that should be in your repertoire as a father. It just should. Anyway, got something else to say before we go?
I don't.
This is the DG Show with Dana and Coco. 7 to 8 on Sundays. We starting the year off with a
It's gonna be a
shitty
good
topic.
year, y'all.
It's gonna be a
It's
good
gonna be a
year.
good year.
It's definitely gonna be a good year. The shift is in full effect. Whether y'all understand, as much chaos is going on, it's a lot of progression going on with it.
Be intentional.
Yeah, be intentional. Move with intent. I agree with that. But good night.
Good night.